and we are back for the episode 6 serious Q&A. I was hoping that the convenience of a single white remaining after the White Walker leading the scouting party is killed, the lack of the white giants in the episode, and the fact that the Night King waited for Dany to show up with the dragons before using his javelin to not target a stationary Drogon with everyone on his back could suggest a trap. I don't have that much faith in D&D, but any chance George's bullet points include a ploy where the Night King's goal was to capture a dragon and have someone bring a white further south of the Wall's magic than Castle Black or Winterfell? So essentially the question is, are all of these dumb moves on the part of the Night King really part of a large master plan? So it's really tough to say with the show, but I can tell you what I believe about the books, and if true, it is perhaps possible that some of this information passed to D&D, and they've incorporated something similar into the show. So one thing that's very important to note is that in the first season and the first book, 2 whites are found near the Night's Watch's Weirwood Circle, north of the Wall, by Ghost. They're brought back, come alive, and try to kill Jeor Mormont, and Ghost is the one who really defeats them. Now the incident is actually more complicated, with Jon weirdly blacking out and losing time, and the whites also targeting Jeremy Riker. But on a real basic level, we have 2 whites left where the Night's Watch would be definitely going. It seemed like an intentional Trojan horse attack. Now it's really hard to say who left the whites there. Did the White Walkers leave them there, figuring Ghost would find them and then they could attack the Lord Commander? Or did the Children of the Forest leave the whites there to start a war between humanity and the White Walkers? Or did Mance Rayder leave them there to try to weaken the Watch? Was Ghost in on it, or controlled by someone else, or was he just some unwitting pawn? Keep in mind, this attack did help trigger the Great Ranging and the discovery of the Dragon Glass and the attack on the Fist of the First Men. It was kind of a big deal. But most importantly, it shows that there's planning and scheming going on north of the Wall. Now, George R. Martin does love writing about conspiracies, and I do think it's quite likely that there's some sort of grand conspiracy going on that explains what's going on with the Children of the Forest and the White Walkers. The details are a bit shaky in how large and extensive the plan or conspiracy could be. So, could the conspiracy require dragons? Is someone purposely placing visions to bring back dragons so that they're brought north? Here in the show, Visions brought the Hound and the Brotherhood Without Banners north and probably told Mel to get Jon and Dany together. Is there a sender of these visions? And if there is he planning something? And how far back does this plan go? In the book, these visions are even integral to the birthing of dragons. Could someone have a plan that goes that far back? It's all tough to say, but what we can say is that in the books there are certainly several vision bestowers. Bloodraven, Marwyn, Quaithe, the Shrouded Lord. We seem to have several players in a game battling each other Sand King style. By the way, you should all definitely read Sand Kings. In the books it seems to be Quaithe who's involved in the birthing of dragons and sending Dany visions that she should go destroy the White Walkers. But we don't really know anything about Quaithe. Is she trying to stop the White Walkers? Is she trying to help them? Is she unwittingly being tricked? We have no idea. At least for the books, I tend to believe that the children are the grand conspirators and they're trying to get humanity to kill itself by starting a war. And I will say George R. Martin has been very sheepish about answering questions on whether or not the White Walkers are evil. I tend to think they aren't completely and that the children are instigating the conflict. However, the show has a seemingly different plot, that the White Walkers are an out-of-control superweapon and that the children are somewhat apologetic over creating them. This seems to point to the idea that the White Walkers are in fact evil and need to be stopped. The thing is, though, as I lay this all out there, I realize that this is all way too complicated for the show. The showrunners can't keep basic facts straight about what happened a few minutes earlier in the show. So at the end of the day, no, I don't think there's any grand conspiracy going on with the Night King. When someone in the book has a vision, it's probably a nefarious tool used to influence the character in a grand game of chess. When someone in the show has a vision, it's probably just the showrunners trying to move the character in the plot to where they need to be. What do you think about Tyrion calling for Dany to break the wheel? Is it a spoiler from the books, like they'll try to end feudalism in the end too? As much as I hate the break the wheel speech, I actually do think they're going to try to bring down the system in the book. A Song of Ice and Fire is pretty darn critical of feudalism, monarchy, and rule by heredity. And that's to only name a few things wrong with Planetos. Yes, there's a lot of human death in our story, but it also seems that the systems themselves are dying in every way. The role of banking, the role of religion, the role of slavery, the role of women. All of these things are rapidly changing in the world of Ice and Fire. It's really becoming a perfect storm of revolution, and everywhere we see the small folk and the lower classes entering the story as significant. The crappy houses and the children of thralls that brought about Euron, the small folk who support the Brotherhood without banners, the sparrows who took over the church, the slaves who had a revolution in Slaver's Bay. It's rapidly becoming an almost Marxist story, a story of the people. And I even wonder if the gravedigger from A Feast for Crows is meant to represent the gravedigger of feudalism, a term used by Marx. Marx said that the bourgeoisie created the gravedigger of feudalism by exploiting the working class. Or this might be a coincidence, who knows? Preston, what do you think about Bran as the Night King rumors? Well, this gets into time travel, and I will say that George R. R. Martin has 3 other time travel stories other than A Song of Ice and Fire. And time travel in all of these stories is similar in one main respect. Only one's consciousness is traveling through time. In George R. R. Martin's mind, this gets around various time travel paradoxes. For example, the classic time travel paradox is what happens if one goes back in time and kills one's grandfather. One would cease to exist and therefore couldn't kill one's grandfather, and then one would exist again since one's grandfather wasn't killed. So in George R. R. Martin's stories, you can get around this paradox by possessing someone else. If you possess, say, Eduardo, and Eduardo is the one that kills your grandfather, you cease to exist, but there's no paradox since Eduardo is the one that did it. I understand that this doesn't really make sense, but this is how George R. R. Martin does time travel. So my problem with Bran as the Night King is the Night King is physical, and George doesn't have 2 of the same physical object occupying the same time. He exclusively does consciousness time travel. Now it may be that the Night King is skin changed by future Bran, I could buy that, but the Night King himself is not physically Bran. When the Faceless Men wear a mask, doesn't their body change as well? I thought of the masks as kind of a prop for the magic to work, not like a mechanical mask. Well, certainly we see Jaqen H'ghar simply change his face without the help of any mask, and yet Arya has to use them. So what's going on? Why is that? So how exactly the Faceless Men change their face is a bit of a mystery, but what is certain is that there's several different ways to do it, and this is true in both book and show. So there seems to be at least 4 ways to change one's face. When Arya first comes to the House of Black and White in the book, the Kindly Man explains the first way. Just use your facial muscles to alter your appearance. This honestly doesn't seem like it would be very effective, but perhaps the Kindly Man is trying to awaken something in Arya. Later the Kindly Man mentions a second way, artifice, like a mummer in a play. And Arya does notice another Faceless Man using this method to change his nose at various times. However, the Kindly Man dismisses this method as not very effective because wise men can see through it. The third way mentioned by the Kindly Man is glamour, whatever that is. Magic? A hologram? This seems to be the method that Jaqen H'ghar first uses. However, the Kindly Man does say that this method requires years of prayer, sacrifice, and study, and that sharp eyes can see through it anyway. Interestingly, Syrio Forel was chosen to be First Sword of Braavos for his sharp eyes, perhaps to defend against Faceless Men. The fourth and final way are the masks. The masks are a very strange thing indeed, and are clearly meant to parallel the weirwood trees. There are faces on the wall like weirwood faces, they're activated with the power of blood, and like the weirwood net, Arya enters a state of shared consciousness when using one. She actually feels the memories and consciousness of the dead person she's wearing. Now the book is rather ambiguous about what exactly happens to Arya when she wears the mask. Arya herself feels like her face hasn't changed at all. The Kindly Man, though, tells her that her face is horrific now, and that people will stare. But when Arya is out and about, people don't really notice her at all, either as a familiar or a freak. So we don't really know what's going on. It's possible that the mask is changing Arya, but it's also possible that the mask is simply a placebo trying to get Arya to change her face subconsciously by herself. Or perhaps the spirit of the dead person is helping her change her face, or perhaps her face hasn't changed at all. If the mask does in fact change a face, I'm not sure why the house would ever use inferior methods like glamour or artifice, though. There seems to be something special about Arya. Now in the show, the masks do seem to be actually changing Arya's face, voice, and height somehow. There's no ambiguity to it, and it does seem like the masks are working more mechanically rather than magically or telepathically. The most impressive feat actually seems to be Arya's ability to craft these masks. We aren't certain how Arya learned this incredible talent. And that's all for the episode 6 Q&A. Sorry this one was so short, but my mom's in town, gotta show her around. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.